Hello students, by now we have learned what is a communication system and the basic terminologies, a very few basic terminologies which we are using in a communication system. So what is a communication system? A system in which information is transferred from one point to another. That is what communication system is, right? So here in this video we are going to learn in detail and we are going to cover all the terminologies which involves in a communication system. So this video is all about the basic terminologies which are there in a communication system. Before going into the basic terminologies, I just want to remind you one important thing about communication system. Communication system, we know what is a communication system, right? But in how many ways we can communicate, that also is very important, right? So basically there are two main modes of communication system. The first one is point-to-point communication, and the second one is broadcast communication. So there are two main modes of communication, that is point-to-point as well as broadcast communication system. So as the name suggests, point-to-point communication is nothing but the information is transmitted from one transmitter and it is received by one receiver. That is what point-to-point communication. The best example for point-to-point communication is nothing but telephone, right? Or nowadays we are using mobile, so that all comes under point-to-point communication. Now the second mode of communication is broadcast communication. Here also we can identify the meaning. It's very simple. In broadcast communication, the information will be transmitted from one transmitter and will be received by many receivers. So in broadcast communication, there will be one transmitter. That means the information will be transmitted by one transmitter and the same information will be received by many receivers. For example, the movie which you are watching in your TV or a cricket match which you are watching, right? If a cricket match is happening in Melbourne Stadium and you are sitting at Mumbai and I am at Delhi, at the same time we both are watching the same match, right? So that all comes under broadcast communication. So these are the two main modes of a communication system, that is point-to-point as well as broadcast communication. So students, this is the basic block diagram of a communication system which we have already learned. And in this basic block diagram, we have learned about transmitter, channel, receiver, etc. So now we are going to understand what all are the things which involves in a communication system, right? It's not only these much things, as we have already discussed about a transducer in our last class. Okay, so let's start with the information source. As the name suggests, it's nothing but the source of information. The source of information can be audio, video, data, anything, right? So that information will be given to the transmitter as the message signal. And we know here one process which is happening, the transducer will be converting the information source signal into an electrical signal. Because in an electronic communication system, the signal which will be carried in the communication system will be obviously electrical signals, right? So we need some device to convert that particular information source into an electrical signal. For that we use a transducer. So the first basic terminology which we have to handle in a communication system is transducer. Transducer is nothing but which converts the information source into electrical signal. Right? So now once it reaches the transmitter, then what happens? The transmitter will be carrying that electrical signal to the receiver through a channel. But the channel here is, it can be anything, it can be any medium. But normally it will be air, right? So there will be many noise will be getting added, not the noise which we normally makes in the class. Here the term noise says about what? Here the term noise is nothing but the unwanted signals. When I was a kid, mobile phone was not that familiar at the time. We used to call or we used to communicate with telephones, normal telephones, right? So at times it happens like this. When I'm calling my dad, I can hear, before ringing the bell of my dad's phone, I can hear someone else is talking in between. There, what is happening, even you might have experienced when you are calling to some particular number, if there is a network jam or something like that, even you might have experienced the same. You can hear someone else is talking, not the person whom you want to talk, right? So that happens because of the addition of noise to the channel. So noise is nothing but the unwanted signals which is getting added with the input or the information signal. So noise is the unwanted signals. Now the third one which we have to discuss is about signal, right? So what is a signal? We have already learned about a signal. Signal is nothing but the information which is converted into electrical form which is suitable for transmission. Then we can call that particular information as a signal. I'll repeat, information which is converted into electrical form and which is suitable for the transmission is called a signal. So why we are saying that the information is converted into electrical form? Because the communication system which we are learning about is an electronic communication system, right? So signal can be defined as the information which is converted into electrical signal or in the electrical form which is suitable for transmission is called a signal. Okay. Now next is channel, which we have already discussed about. Channel is nothing but the medium in which the information is transmitting. Now one thing which I want to ask you is, I have already told you that the information source is getting converted into another signal, that is the electrical signal. Just imagine you are calling to X or Y person. So if you want, and he picked up the call and you want to say hello. So what was your information source? What was the input you have given to the electronic communication system? It was a sound signal, right? And by using the transducer, the transmitter will be converting that information source, that is your sound signal, into electrical form. That time, listen very carefully. At that time, what will happen? Either the strength of the signal is getting increased or it may get decreased, right? Because it is getting converted from one form to another. Are you getting it or not? Okay. Which means the sound signal got converted into electrical signal. So we can say that the strength of the signal can get decreased or it can get increased. Or fine, now there we are assuming that nothing had happened. Okay, the sound signal which you had given, the same strength got converted into electrical form. Here also the problem can arise, but I am assuming that no, nothing had happened when you have converted, when the transducer had converted your information or the information source into the message signal. But here the problem will be arising in the channel, right? Because what is noise? Unwanted signals, right? These unwanted signals will be getting mixed up with the information source, with your message signal. That time what can happen? The same which I have told, either the strength of the signal can get increased or it can get decreased, right? So what will be the receiver receiving when it reaches the receiver end? You have said, just imagine that you have said hello in a very sweet voice, but the receiver was receiving something very weird, right? Because if the signal strength is getting increased, then if you are saying hello, then he'll be able to hear hello or something like that, right? So it will be creating a trouble. So that what we have to do is we have to remove that unwanted signal which got added with your message signal, right? So for that we have to amplify. So another new term which involves in a communication system is amplification. Amplification is nothing but we are increasing the strength. Actually, we can say that we are increasing the strength of the signal. Because just imagine two troubles can happen when noise is getting added. Either the strength of the signal will be getting decreased, or else there will be something will be getting added with the signal, right? Which means either it will be getting increased or decreased. There will be a loss of strength, or there will be more. The strength of the signal will be getting more than what you have to receive. So there we involves one particular process called amplification, which improves the signal strength. So the next thing which we are learning about is amplification. Amplification is clear for you all. It's nothing but it's increasing the signal strength. So the next important terminology which is related with communication system is nothing but, we can call it as the fifth one, is attenuation. Attenuation is nothing but the loss of strength, which I have already explained. Loss of strength of the signal. It happens when? It happens when the message signal is carried through the channel or the medium. When noise is getting added with the channel, strength of the signal can either get increased or decreased. If the signal strength is decreasing, then we call it as a attenuation. Okay. Now, so the next important terminology which I am going to discuss about is modulation. Modulation is actually a very important terminology when we are considering about communication system. So the next one is modulation. Modulation is actually a little difficult thing to understand, but it's the most important, one of the most important terminology or important process which happen in a communication system. As I have already told, the information source will be getting converted into an electrical signal, and that message signal will be carried to the receiver end, right, which is getting converted by a transducer. But when it is getting converted, I have told you one thing which you have to remember. When it is getting converted, if the strength of the signal is getting decreased, then how it will be reaching the receiver end? In between, the message signal will be lost, right? Because the medium which we are using is such kind of medium. So in order to carry this message signal to the receiver end, we have to modulate the particular signal which got converted into electrical form. So modulation is nothing but it's superimposing a high frequency wave with a low frequency wave. I am taking the same example again. If you are giving the input signal as hello, which means in the transmitter end or in the information source end, you are saying hello to the user of information, which is your friend. So the information source, it has to convert that hello into the electrical signal in order to carry it to through a electrical device or an electronic device, right? So for that, when it is happening, what will happen? The strength of the signal will be getting decreased so that it won't be reaching the receiver end. You are saying here hello, 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 and your friend is asking, man, what are you saying? I can't hear anything. Right? Which means the signal is not getting modulated properly. So in order to modulate the signal, we will be using the process called modulation. Modulation is nothing but superimposing a high frequency wave with a low frequency wave. Now we are coming to the end of the basic terminologies of a communication system. We have learned about modulation. Obviously, once it is modulated, what is happening? You are increasing the strength of the signal, right? But when it reaches the receiver end, again the same trouble will be happening. You are saying hello and your friend is hearing something else. So there another process will happen which is called as demodulation. What it is? Demodulation. We are removing the superimposed high frequency wave to retain the original signal. Now these are the basic parameters or the basic terminologies which we should understand when we are learning about communication system. Now one more thing is there, which is a repeater. As the name suggests, it's the same. It repeats the signal. For example, again I am taking the same example. You are calling from India and you want to talk with your aunt who is in America. Okay, so how it will be reaching there? Or if you are speaking with her, how she will be able to hear? There, what is happening is the signal will be getting repeated, which means a repeater is actually a combination of a transmitter, receiver and an amplifier. So once it will be reaching a particular, it will be covering a particular distance, then again that receiver will be acting as a transmitter and that will be transmitting that signal to a receiver end. Then that thing will be getting carried on to a longer distance. So repeater is basically used to carry signals to a longer distance. So repeater is nothing but, repeater is a combination of a transmitter, receiver as well as an amplifier. So students, here in this video, we have discussed about the basic terminologies which involves in a communication system. We have learned about transducer, which converts the information source into electrical signal. Then we have learned about noise, which is unwanted signal. Then we have learned about signal, which is the information which is getting converted into electrical form and which is suitable for transmission. That is what a signal. Amplification, in order to amplify the signal, in order to increase the strength of the signal, we will be using the process called amplification. Attenuation is nothing but the loss of strength of signal. Modulation, superimposing a high frequency wave with a low frequency wave in order to carry the information signal to the receiver end. Demodulation, at the receiver end the modulated signal should get demodulated. So demodulation is the reverse process of modulation. Then repeater is nothing but a combination of a transmitter, amplifier and an receiver.